All right, so we'll scoot over to the licenses pages and take a look at a few licenses and just talk um, a little bit about it so that you can have a starting point to decide on which license you want to go with, right? So let me go to the MIT license page. You can always go to opensource.org to find out what kind of licenses are available under the open source initiative. So the MIT license is the easiest. You can look at it. It gives anyone, unlimited and permissions without restriction, including the rights to use your work, copy or modify your work, and publish it also, right? And it also comes with a kind of disclaimer saying that if anything is published under open source, then the publisher may not be liable for any kind of damages or claims, right? This is the easiest license. The step up probably or the alternative for that is the two clause BSD. And the two clause BSD has got a couple of clauses. And here you can see that it has a disclaimer, just as the other license, but these two conditions are clear. One talks about the source code and the other talks about how the redistribution will work. Similarly, the three clause, which is something that I understand very clearly. So to me, I understand this the easiest because one thing it says is that anybody, when redistributing the code, then this copyright must be, published with it. And then if somebody is redistributing my work, then this, license must be published along with that. And the third most important thing is just because you're sharing your work with somebody and they're using your work, it does not necessarily mean that whoever is borrowing your work will endorse or promote something that is built with your work. They have to ask for some kind of permission from you saying that, look, I built something based on your work and I need your written permission for whatever it is that they're trying to do, right? Do your research, think about what is it you're publishing and what kind of license is going to give you the cover that you need to protect your intellectual contribution, right, to the
Yeah.
marketplace, right? So the Apache license is another alternative, but it is very verbose, but you can take a look at it. And then there is also one thing nice about Apache licenses. They show you how to apply this license to your work, basically how to publish this along with your work. So take a note of all these licenses and just go through. But again, like I said, these are for open source publications only. If you're doing something under your own licensing terms, then you have to come out with a good license to give you all the cover, and you have to publish your own license in your NuGet package, right? So please be mindful of that. Now that you've taken care of the technicalities of the package, it is time for us to now submit this work to the UiPath Marketplace.
Yeah, this is the most exciting part. Your development is done. Now you're ready to submit it for
Right,
the verification process on UiPath
right.
website. So how long does it take in general to get a feedback?
It takes anywhere from at least 1 to 2 weeks. If there is an issue with your submission, I think that part is quicker. They come back and tell you that there's something wrong and please resubmit. So
Mhm.
you go back to your listing and then you update your listing and resubmit it. And then it will take probably a week or two from there for you to get a response. Again,
Okay,
it
so
depends on the complexity of your listing and the functionality and the testing that they have to do on their end.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So when the first time we submit, that there is no real time validation right at that moment when you're publishing it.
There are some usual form validations, but your code must be submitted along with the library,
Okay.
right? So they will take the code, they will test the code, and based upon which your component is going to be published,
Okay.
right? So we'll look at that when we go to the marketplace listing, and I'll show you the difference between your component versus your package code, right? Or
Okay.
your project code, right?
Hmm.
So I am going to switch to the marketplace. Please note this is my marketplace dashboard, and these are my listings for the RPA Vanguard channel. And If you look at it, this is the prime logging enterprise library that I recently got published, right? And I submitted this somewhere in the middle of September, and you see it was published 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, based on their UiPath's testing, speed, the speed at which they test and publish the components, right? So one thing that you have to note is that I am going to edit an existing listing, but I'm not going to save my changes. But when you are going to start publishing, you will start a new listing, right? So you might go to publisher account and say create a listing, right? And when I click edit, that is pretty much the same screen that you're going to come to, and it's a very nice friendly way of submitting. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to say edit. Please note that the edit button is disabled when your component is under review. So one thing to note, so once you submit, you come back and look at the edit button, it will be disabled, right? So be mindful of that even before you start. Make sure you have everything that you need to submit. So what I'll do is I'll go to the edit feature and I'll show you step by step how this particular component has been submitted. So it's a very intuitive interface. As soon as you start a new listing or come to an existing listing, you will see the 4 steps here. And here is where you got to be mindful of what UiPath interface is trying to show you. Pay attention to the right of your screen. There is something called a card preview, right? So keep this in mind when you're submitting your component for the first time. Be thoughtful about what you want to put here on your card. It should be brief, it should be crisp, and it should be easy for people to identify and understand what your component is doing. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you need help, go back to some of the listings to see how that looks, so that you can prepare the material that you're going to submit on your listing, right? So the first step for you is to identify which kind of a listing it is. So I'm going to cover the free listing because we are talking in terms of open source contributions, or open open market contributions. So free, obviously you need to have a listing. And then what is this associated with, right? Is this associated with studio? Is this associated with integration service? So you can select the right kind of product that your component is associated to. Obviously my component is a library, it is associated with studio, so studio is the prime product that I'm going to select. Then the category will be custom activity because this is a custom component, so I'm going to select custom activity. And what is the listing type? This might be a downloadable or it might be a lead. If it's downloadable, that means consumers who come to the site can download the listing right there. If it's a lead, it will probably go to a website that will capture your information for further follow up, right? So in this case, this is downloadable. So I'm putting something in here. I'm going to select downloadable as my selection. And then this is important. Please note the compatibility. It is required. Anything with an asterisk here that you see is required. You got to mention at least the start version of your
The
product.
minimum version, right? The
Correct.
minimum version that it supports.
Correct. So in my case, I'm submitting a component that is now going to support .NET 5 or higher, and it is being submitted because the last stable version of Studio was 2022.4 at the time I was doing it. And then select your language. Obviously, Visual Basic is, and most often than not, is the language. So Visual Basic, and then submit what framework you are supporting, right? If your
The runtime.
yeah, if your component is going to run on both Linux and Windows, then it is cross-platform. If it is Windows only, it might be 4.5 for .NET 4 or .NET version 5 or higher.
And this is very key what Andy is mentioning, is because, like, if there are any organizations that are still using like Studio 2018, then I think like the components that are newly built will not be compatible. So which is
Yeah,
why like what Andy is telling is very, very important to mention. Like the component that you're building is going to be supported from the framework that you have built it upon. So
correct.
if you built it on like 2022, and that's how, and whatever DLLs that you have used, And if you don't have .NET 5.0, and right now everybody's on like 6 or 6.1, so
Yeah.
if you don't have that latest, it's very, very important that you mention that, because
Yep.
people that download and install it and then they find out that they need an older version, then it'll be like slightly a compatibility issue.
Yep. So here is the here's one more thing that you have to remember. UiPath is going to send you an email saying, hey, your component is becoming old. It is no longer supported by because we are not going to support the older .NET 4 version, and we are going to remove your component from listing,
Yeah,
right?
and that's a very genuine reason. Even Microsoft doesn't support
Correct,
4.3, 4.2, 4.4 version,
correct, correct,
and even 4.6 version support will wrap up very soon.
correct. Now, Pradeep, this comes back to the question of, you know, what we need to submit as assets to our listing. Look at this. This is the package, the .nu package that I
Mm-hmm.
modified in NuGet Package Explorer by adding the license, the description, and removing everything from there that I needed to, and saving that package, right? And that is the package that you're going to upload here.
Okay.
But what you're going to upload in the source code is your actual project source code. You go to
So
your
there is
studio folder, you zip that up, and you upload it here,
so there
right?
is no changes required on the source code itself. So
No,
as the solution folder that we have, just
correct,
zip it and we
correct.
can upload it
But
here.
please be very, very mindful, because I will show you why. Please be mindful that if you have got any defaults, if you have got any credentials, if you have got any connections, please make sure to remove them, because you have to agree to a condition of privacy condition in the next few screens. So therefore, when you package your project as a zip file, please remove all those defaults and data that has no business to be there. No
Mm-hmm.
hard coded usernames, no hard coded passwords, emails, anything that personally identifies you or anyone else, right? Make sure there isn't any of that in your code. Something that you have to keep in mind when you upload your project code here, right? And the other thing that you have to notice, UiPath will not publish your code with your listing. They will publish only your package, right? So also it is good to know that. So once you have filled up the screen, you will have a next button. Basically, this is where the description goes. And here is where your listing will make all the difference, because you have to give it some thought on what is it that you want to describe in the description part of your listing, right? The first thing would be obviously your listing title. And this is something you would have already thought of. Make sure that it is intuitive and it represents what you want your component to do. The second would be your icon or logo. You can upload your icon or logo. And then this is required. It is the version of the library or the component that you are uploading. We saw back when I demonstrated the NuGet package explorer that the version of my package is 2.1.5. So you got to put that in. It is required. The next thing would be the release notes. Obviously, if this is your first version, you might not have much to put in here. But if you are having any other changes that you have made, then you got to briefly bullet or write a passage about what this release is. If you don't have anything to write, you can say this is the initial version or the initial release, the first release, right? And then again, please add tags that will make your listing searchable in the marketplace, and it makes a lot of difference. And also there is a limit on the length of the tag. You can't really put a very large or a long tag. It's limited by 20 characters. Then card summary. This is where uh, what you have on your listing matters. When you saw in the marketplace, your listing is displayed as a card, and this line here, this catch line, this is the one that actually your audience will make sense of, right? And understand what your listing is about. So um, try to use a well composed line, and you will not believe how much information UiPath has made available for you to help you through this, right? So there is a listing guideline that if you follow, it is very easy to get through this process. So I'm going to go to that page and show you. This page gives you a full list, a full walkthrough of how you must publish your work. And one of the things that you have to focus on is the do's and don'ts. Very, very useful, very helpful. And here is an example, right? They say, how should your title look like? And what you should not, must not be doing if you want to have an effective title. For example, here is how the title should look like. It should talk about what system you're building and what is the destination system. So what is your software doing and what is the destination system? Now here is an example, right? It says facial recognition model for Microsoft Azure. This is a good library title, but if you say Microsoft Azure facial recognition model, that's not going to cut it, because your work is not on Microsoft Azure. Your work is you're building something that will run in Microsoft Azure, right? Or is works with Microsoft Azure. So the base system should come always at the end, right? So try to have your title structured as UiPath has actually given a lot of examples, right? And then think about what you're describing, right? Be very specific to what your listing is doing, right? And again, another thing is this will help your users who are based in a specific location. If you are building something especially for a certain geographical area, make sure you include that in your listing, right? For Spain, Japan, California, etc. If you're doing something zonal, make sure to reflect that. It's very easy. If you go through this and spend some time, the whole process becomes that much easier, right?
Right.
So come out with a good title for your listing, right? We have covered the logo, we have covered the version, and then here, please be careful. Don't use the images that are not yours. And we covered the release notes, the version, and then the tags, and then card summary. This is again very important. This is the summary that appears in your card on what your component does. Again, lot of help here. I don't think there is any other resource that gives us so much help. Here you can see how they have given you examples of what your component does. And I have followed this and applied it to my own listing. Look at this, right? Efficiently manage sensitive logging in enterprise RPA process. That's it, simple. That's my card summary, right? And my title is Prime Logging Enterprise Library. That's pretty much it. And once you have nailed that, next comes the description, right? You don't have to write a large description, write very crisp, short description. And remember, this is a rich text editor. So take advantage of annotating and formatting your text so that it draws the right kind of attention to your listing. Use bulleted text, use bold or italicized text to highlight what is it that your listing is emphasizing, what is it promoting, what is it solving, right? So here I have highlighted and underlined a few of the things that I think make sense. Similarly, highlight the features of your component. That is the description, but then what does your component boast about as a feature? What does, and in that feature is also listed what is it that you're trying to solve. So you can see what is it that I'm trying to solve here with this component, right? And have a few quick bullets. Remember, all of this is required. You need to have an overview, you need to have features, and then at least one image that represents your component. If you have screenshots from your project, if you have screenshots from your library, or any other kind of image that can describe your component, please put them out here. And then if you are not fond of writing long documentation, you can post a video URL about your component, right? A short video of what your component does and how to use it, right?
Right. The purpose of all of this data is to showcase your component in such a way that end user can make sense of it, and also
Correct.
they get an idea how to use it, for what purposes this particular component is beneficial for them.
Correct.
um, think about this, right? You have put in such an effort to build a component, and if you do a poor job describing what you have built, then you're not doing justice to your own
Correct.
efforts, right?
Correct.
So spend some time, and like Andy mentioned, the documentation is fabulous. But if you see that you have some challenges, or you're not getting the exact what you're looking for, you can always go back in the marketplace, search, look for other components, and you see how they have put together,
Right.
right? How they have put together overview, features, and
Right.
additional content that they have supplied with their listing. And that should give you enough idea. There are more than, I believe now, more than 2,000 components are out there, right? So
Right.
that's enough data
Uh,
set that you can really leverage to
Yeah.
your own advantage.
No, great point. That's really good. I mean, you can really look up to other publishers, seasoned publishers there, and definitely learn from their work, right?
And
And so
also
one,
think of this as like, like how we consider, when you download apps for your phone, you go to the app store, you check like, all the app description and look at the screenshots, right? So that's what Andy is showing here. These images are basically those screenshots of your component. So it's very,
correct,
very important to showcase your product that you have built so that like other people can benefit from that. Because if you just simply write a one line saying like, hey, this is just gonna do this, that might be like a good description, but it might not give the look and feel of like what your component is truly capable of. So that's why it's very, very important. And if you can make a video and that's truly like amazing, it's gonna like show a demo of what your component can do.
right. So, I think that plays a lot into what you really need to promote your component, right? It has to promote itself. So, a little effort, upfront effort here will go a long way, right? So, once you have figured all of this out and then filled up this page, this will take you the most time. So before you step in to submit your component, please take the time to write some things, keep it ready so that you can submit at the earliest, right? You don't have to linger here and struggle with what you need to put in here, right? So then we go to the next page. And here is the screen that will allow you to fill in some of the additional terms and conditions that you require to satisfy your listing requirements. Now, on the right here, you see the listing. Your card is showing a preview, which is excellent because now it shows, what is your punchline here, what is the name of your library, right? And then you can also preview everything that you've filled in up until now, just to get a mock-up of how your listing is going to look like. So
Mhm.
feel free to look at it, then go back to your previous screens and modify it accordingly, right? So take some time, don't be in a hurry, but at the same time be prepared to do all the things swiftly but in a relaxed manner, right? Now here are the dependencies. Again, like I said, the lesser dependencies you have, the less work you have to do in this section, right? So here you can see just two listings, two dependencies. I've added them here. We are done. Again, choose your license. We just spoke about the license in a short while ago, and make the selection. Remember, when you say custom license, you have to be ready to publish your own license, upload your own license, or give a URL to your own license, right? Very, very important privacy terms. Like I said in the first screen, be very careful before you upload your source code, because you are confirming that you are not in any way processing any personal information, be it yours, be it someone else's, right? So here, when you say yes or no, it comes with liabilities. So please be very careful. And I am defensive. I say no because none of my listings carry any kind of hard coded settings which are identifiable, personally identifiable to someone, right? Then comes the documentation. Here you can see that my documentation has a strange name because I changed the brand name of my component from my previous name, my Andy Menon, to RPA Vanguard, and that's why it says migrated, because UiPath helped me migrate that to RPA Vanguard. But usually you will have your PDF listing here, or your PDF documentation. If you have that, put that in here. But if you have written your documentation as a web page somewhere, put that URL here. And then this is important. If you are going to be applying for silver or gold badging, then the support cannot be most likely cannot be community. It has to come from you. And if you are applying for gold badging, you cannot have any Google address or a Hotmail address. You have to have a website to back up your component, right? So if you are submitting something that you're serious about, that you're expecting to support and expecting to get a good badging, then you can see, you can select the type of support, and then you put in your support email. Phone is not always necessary, but you have to put in your email, your support email and your support website. So your website has to have your domain, your at least one support email, and optionally a phone number where customers can reach out to you, right? And then very, very important, SLA, right? So when you put in your SLA, you have to put in a decent hour based on where you're expecting your customer base to be and where you are expected to be available. And then you give them what is the response time. And then if there is a problem that you have to resolve, how fast can you resolve a problem? Now remember, this is a silver badged component, so the resolution time is about 10 days. But for a gold badged component, it is much lesser, right? The response time is, I think, 72 hours or something. So look at the documentation for gold badging and silver badging requirements and fill in what you need here to arrive at what kind of a listing that you want to publish, right? And remember, folks, if your listing has been done accurately, tested well, very rarely you will get technical queries from your users. The more effort you put in your documentation, your video, the more effort you put in your testing, the lesser of the technical glitches and technical issues that you have to spend troubleshooting, because you will have less number of people hitting you, right? So please pay attention to that and spend some time. Don't be in a hurry. Okay.
It's just like that you release a code and you don't expect a production bugs, right? So if you do
Yeah,
a better job in development and testing, then you'll have less issues.
correct. Correct. That is why it is so important that we are starting something. If you start small, get the experience of listing something, testing something, and get that confidence, then start expanding to a larger component, right? And obviously you have to accept the marketplace partner agreement, because if you're listing gold or silver, you have to accept the partner agreement. And once you do that, you will hit submit, right? And once the submission is accepted, provided there are no errors, you have not left any wanted or required field unfilled, your listing must be accepted, and then you will be taken to a thank you page, right? Now in this case, I'm going to cancel my listing because I don't need to edit or submit it, and then I can cancel this out. And then what's going to happen is, once you are submitted it, your status would say something to the effect of that you have submitted it and that it is being reviewed. So you can check the exact status once you submit. But after you are done, in a week's time or so, you must hear back from UiPath over the email that you have provided as part of your automation cloud account. You will get an email saying if there is a problem with your component, what is it that you need to fix, right? And then you can come back to this listing and edit your listing, provide all the information that is required. And if you have forgotten to agree upon a license and modify your package correctly, make sure you do that and upload your package, upload your project code properly, and resubmit your listing, right? So once you do that, I'm sure that within a couple of weeks, you will get an update from UiPath saying, hey, your component has been published. Here is the link to the listing. And you can go directly to that listing, and then you can see your first component published. And Congratulations in advance if you've done that. So as a last part, let me just go through a listing and show you how all the pieces fit together when a consumer looks at your listing, right? So let me try to see if I can go to this listing here.
That's where all the screenshots come in.
Correct. Here is obviously the URL to your page. In this case, in my case, it's rpavanguard.com. Then the license you have agreed to, the privacy terms you have agreed to, and of course, you have the technical information. And then the tags that you added will appear here. Your SLA information will appear here. And then, of course, the documentation that you put will appear here. And then anything that you have provided as summary, overview, and all the features will appear here. And in the end, at the bottom, the dependencies will be listed, right? I like the screenshots part because this is the first thing that I focus on. So I tried to put some effort that's required. So here you can see how that component will look when people add it to their project, right? And then what is the view they will see in there when they try to access the methods of that library in the project. Then how do you configure it? It is just a communication. Even without documentation, if somebody looks at this, they can take a look at and see how to fill up or configure this component, right? So a brief scratch pad on or a whiteboard drawing of how people can use this component, right? And then the output, what is it that they're going to see in the logs, right? What is it, how, if you configure it one way and if you configure it the other way, what are the differences that they see, right? And then finally, how do you configure it if you want to globally turn off sensitive logging in production or in development, etc. So all of these screenshots are based on my experience of testing, and I gathered them during testing to show users what this component does, right? So in place of these pictures, you can make a video too, right? It's all
Right,
up to you,
right.
right?
Uh, this is very hands-on, in-depth session on how to create a custom component
Right,
on that goes on Marketplace. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Some of the things that I knew about it, but I really understood how they are being used. So thanks,
right,
Andy, for spending so much effort in putting this all together and bringing your component to share with us and going through each of the steps. Now, this is really helpful. This is something that really anyone can just take it from here and start publishing their own components.
right,
Thanks so much, Andy. It was very, very informative. Like what Pradeep said, you went like to the very detail of like, explaining about the license types, which is kind of quite hard for people to find that kind of detail. And I think this will be very useful for any new custom component developers, or even like there are many partners and organizations that have been asking like, how can I get my teams to do this? So this will be like one of their go-to videos to see and like how to build these components. And like when you show the icons and how it shows in the card preview, they can use their company logos there to
right,
showcase their company components, which
right,
is very critical even for the tags. Those will be like a nice way to even like promote their companies.
right,
For anybody that's looking forward in the audience that says like, how do I build my own brand, or how do I build my own organization brand, this is one of the ways to increase your footprint within the UiPath space. Show your, showcase your expertise in those areas, because you might be strong in certain technologies, so you can build those components and share it with the community and make your presence shown.
right.
So if you
I
guys enjoyed this video, please share us in the comments, like what are the different components or the ideas that you have been thinking about?
Yep, I think
absolutely I can't wait to see
yeah.
that
I
how
mean,
many components we'll get.
Yeah, at
publish.
least one person gets back and says, hey, I got something from this, and I submitted my first listing. I think we have achieved the goal of why we made this video in the first place, right? So hopefully that's what we hope for. But thanks for joining me, guys. It was really good making this series, and hopefully we'll be back for more. So until then,
Absolutely.
yeah, see you next time.
See you
Yeah,
next time, guys.
don't
Yeah.
forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your
Yes,
team. All
please
right.
do. Thank you, and we will
Absolutely.
talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.